I'd like to talk a little bit about people wanting to do long retreats. Nowadays, let's say there's a lot of people attending initiations, and young people, 20 and 30-year-olds, are getting very excited, doing the Mundro and all sorts of things like that. And some of them say, "Oh, I want to do a long retreat." So I wanted to talk about, like, how do you do that? And I'll just explain a little bit myself. So for example, 1970, I left Canada and I ended up by November in India. I met Lama Thupten Yeshi, my first guru, the Tibetan Lama, in January of 1971. I got ordained in August of 1971. And then and of course, I was attending teachings. I attended Lama Zopa's first meditation course of the Kapong course. And then I went to India and I attended teachings from Geshe Nawan Darge. And so it was great. I was getting reasonably educated. I wouldn't say well at all, but it's brand new, but I was a monk, very serious. And then in the beginning of 1972, I got a little sad for being away from Lama Thupten Yeshi because he was full of love and joy and bliss. So I returned to Nepal. And then I guess, April, I then went up to the Solo Khumbu to Tamo or Tame, the monastery of Lama Thupten Zopa Rinpoche, up in the mountains, like 15,000 feet, a day's walk from Namche Bazaar and Mount Everest base camp. And I did a 3-month retreat. So, I mean, I've been doing meditation daily, but I said this went into a 3-month retreat. And I was actually really fortunate because I was being supported at this particular point by actually Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa. I did 100 days, complete in silence, in a little sort of stone cabin that belonged to Lama Thupten Zopa Rinpoche's uncle. And I just did, calm abiding mindfulness meditation and focusing on an image of Vajradhara. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I put a lot of energy to that. And I did 3 months. Totally isolated. Nobody visited me, eating 1 meal a day. I mean, it was very, very intense. Then I returned to India, and by 1973, I went into a 9-month retreat. And I did all of the 100,000 prostrations, 100,000 Vajrasattva, Guru Yoga. That was 3 months for each of those retreats, or the first two, and then a month for the next one. And then I did other smaller retreats and things. So I was really an intensive guy. And then again, totally isolated. I didn't speak to anybody at all for those whole 9 months. And so, I mean, I look at it now, and of course, at this time, I was also being supported by Lama Yeshe still. I mean, I had unbelievably good karma. I mean, just unbelievable. It was I was the third Westerner to be ordained in Dharamsala as a monk. There was a French one and a Swiss boy that were ordained at that time. We're all in our 20s. So anyway, I was really lucky, and I seemed to have some sort of ability to be able to do these isolated retreats in complete silence. So now to move forward, and I have to say I was really lucky. It's very good fortune. But moving forward now, okay, so I have these 20 and 30-year-olds. They're in England and France and Germany, and some of them in America. And they're saying, "Oh, I want to, do long retreats." So I thought it's really important to sort of talk about that. How would you accomplish that? Now, if you're similar to me and you just have really, really strong karma, then chances are it's not a big problem. But for most of us, when I went to India, there's no cell phones. And when I got to India, there was no TV, no radio, no newspapers. I was really just sort of isolated from all of the influences. I mean, just really being in a different universe. And so no problems. Whereas for nowadays, I mean, everybody has a cell phone, everybody's Facebook and Twitter, very agitated, can't stop to look at your cell phone every, 20, 30 minutes, things like that. Now, how are you going to do a 3-month or a long retreat? So my thoughts are this, that basically, okay, you've got involved in Tibetan Buddhism. It's a beautiful practice. I've been involved for 52 years now, and I still find interesting, wonderful things to understand. There's the cultivation of your personality, your attitude about life, and that's the graduated path to enlightenment, or the precious words of my teacher, or the inseparability of samsara nirvana, the Lamdre and Sakya tradition. All of those are really, really important. You have to study. You have to know what you're doing to yourself. Okay, and so one part is changing your attitude. So that's one. Two, though, then is then starting to do retreats a little bit, so you become familiar with it. So for example, I would recommend do weekend retreats. Start on Friday, turn your cell phone off. 20 years ago, we didn't have cell phones, or 30 years ago, whatever. We had answering machines. They would take messages, and you go back earlier than that, you needed to send a letter to somebody. So it's not like that we need to be connected all the time with our cell phone, and sorry, if you can't do that, don't think you're going to be able to do a long retreat with focus. Anyway, so do a weekend retreat. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday, turn your cell phone off, become familiar with that. Also, shut down, and if you're a really serious individual, man or woman, and you really want to do deeper practice and get deeper experiences, well, you have to start to, let's say, move internally. The actual Tibetan word for being a Buddhist is called a Nangpa, which means inside. Lama Yeshe described that as being an inner person inside of yourself rather than just an extroverted, mundane individual. It has other meanings, of course, but the thing is that's the one that Lama Yeshe liked to give. So you do that for, well, if you do it every weekend or do it at least twice a month, that you do that. And, again, cultivate your friendships, people that support you for being, doing that sort of stuff. You don't need to tell anybody that you're a Buddhist, actually. There's no necessity of that. So if your family is Catholic or Christian or whatever, you don't need to say I'm a Buddhist now. If they're interested and they're open-minded, yes, but otherwise it's not a necessity. So then anyway, you start doing these little retreats. Then Lama Yeshe, for his students, said every year you should try to do at least 2 weeks of retreat. So again, depends on your financial situation, depends on the work you have and things like that. So maybe, you do a 1 week retreat and such. And during all this time, you're studying. At best is, of course, tending teachings. If you can go and, get graduated path teachings or something like that. There's lots of, YouTube is just full of stuff now. So educate yourself. This is a graduated path to enlightenment. Precious human rebirth, things are impermanent, taking refuge, being more conscious of how I'm creating my karma, the suffering nature of samsara and delusions, then bodhicitta and the 6 perfections, and then practicing tantra. All of that, you've got lots to study there, so do that, study. Anyway, as you say, you've done that, so maybe you've got 2 years under your belt with the weekend retreats and maybe 1 or 2 week retreats when you can fit them in. Then you're going to maybe think, okay, I'm going to do a 1 month retreat. Now, again, I'm thinking most of you are going to be in the West, so try to find a Buddhist Dharma center that sponsors retreats. If there's some long-term meditators or some Tibetan Lama there, that'd be really great. So then you go into retreat. You can do all sorts of retreats. You can do a Manjushri retreat for wisdom. You could do a Tara retreat for enlightened activity. You could do Avalokiteshvara for love and compassion, but you're going to do a 1 month retreat, and in there also you could do contemplative meditations, again the graduated path to enlightenment. So you do 1 month, this may be after 2 years, and being reasonably educated. Then if you start to get into that and you're really into it, now you've got maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years, you've cultivated yourself in a lifestyle of being, looking for deeper internal experiences and more enlightened lifestyle and such. Then maybe I would recommend best, of course, if you go to India. That might sound a bit extreme, but the thing is that would be good because you have a whole culture, even if it's in India where it's a lot of Hinduism, there's a culture of meditation and such like that. Okay, and then on top of it, there's all those different places you could go. Whether it's Dharamsala or close to Dharamsala, there's Tashi Zhang with the Nakpa, the Togdens, the real Tibetan yogis and such. And then there's, I think, Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche's monastery is close to Dharamsala. Or then you go to Dehradun, there's a Sakyapa center there. Or you go to Nepal and such. Or you go to Bodh Gaya, there's retreat centers there. But why? Because the environment. And now we're talking about maybe you're going to do a 2 or 3 month retreat, or maybe even a 6 month retreat, but you've got this very, very conducive environment, and also the cost of living is a lot less. If you are in the West, then maybe you try to find a Dharma center that would be supportive of you doing retreat. There's the land of calm abiding in the FPMT. There's the the Medicine Buddha place, lots of different places you could go, and things. And in England, in Scotland, there's centers. There are places you can do long retreats and possibly get some support. The other thing, of course, is getting support. If you were to be, on social assistance or the dole or whatever your particular country calls it, that's not bad. You can think of it that your country is accumulating good karma by supporting you in your retreat. Now, if you've got other financial means, that's really good. Maybe you get an inheritance from your grandparents or something or whatever. I would think so. Try to be very careful with your money and such, and so you can stretch it out to be able to do these retreats and such. So whether you're doing it in the West, please do it in a center where you have other people meditating, or you do it in India and Nepal, again, whatever seems most appropriate for you. And again, at this point, I would really think that, you need 4 or 5 years of Buddhism under your belt. You're fairly well educated. You've done other retreats, so you got the thing, and you've cultivated that lifestyle. So that would be generally my thoughts about it. If you really considering, like, I want to do some serious practice with myself, Now, just a comment here. Again, I was very lucky. I mean, unbelievable good karma, because again, all the way up until basically 1978, 8 years, I was supported by one Lama Yeshe, for example, living in Tushita Retreat Center or other places, and also had some support from my family. And then when I entered into I did 1970, 78, 79. I did 2 years of retreat, all of the preliminaries again, second time, but I was being supported by Lama Yeshe at that point. Then 1980, I went into my 3-year retreat. And at that point, I was being supported by some Australians that were very generous in helping me, accomplish things and even doing fire rituals and such like that. So I had lots of good karma, and I'm really fortunate that way. So for yourselves, do cultivate your lifestyle, and maybe people will start to support you. It is possible, again, whether it's your family or friends or other Buddhists or something, but establish yourself that you are showing that you're actually a practitioner and you're doing these retreats and such, then people will be supportive of you. They can almost promise that. I mean, Buddha Shakyamuni said that. And I mean, Jesus Christ said it, Buddha Shakyamuni said it too, if you're really serious in your Dharma practice, things will work out. Okay, so that's some thoughts. Now, I'll give you an example of someone that was in Canada. They said, I'm going to do a long retreat, 2-3 year retreat of one particular deity and such. And so I said, okay, that's great. They're a friend of mine. And then what I found out is that prior to starting a retreat, every night they would stay up till like 11 or 12 o'clock at night watching hockey games, because they just had to watch that. That was something they had to do. And I thought, like, how are you going to do a retreat? What sort of retreat are you doing? The real retreat is one establishing calm abiding. That's being able to be incredibly peaceful, not agitated, not your mind running after things. So how could you do that if you're watching hockey games or soccer games or football games or something like that? I mean, you're going to be agitated by that. That's ridiculous. Can't do that, So again, just cultivate the lifestyle, and you will be able to do these longer retreats. But we're talking cultivate yourself 4, 5, 6 years in your Dharma practice, getting teachings, and I'm talking graduated path teachings, not only the tantric teachings, and then when you enter into retreats, you're going to get better experiences. I mean, the real place of enlightenment is deep in your own mind, in your deeper levels of consciousness or whatever, and then in your nervous system and your chakras and such like that. You get there by being peaceful with yourself. You don't get there by running around and being busy and, watching, I don't know, sports events and things like that. Okay. Now, again, don't do this immediately, cultivate yourself, give yourself a year to get into it. And then second year, you're doing it better. And third year, you maybe more. Maybe you're already inclined that way, which would be then perfect. You don't need to worry about it. Again, but that's just some thoughts. So I'm going to do a series of talks about different things for younger people who are trying to look at getting their practice established and who are really very, very serious about it. And actually, I just wanted to comment, for example, I lived in India from 1970 to 1984 with some trips abroad, but basically 14 years. I came back to Canada and I had $800. My mother gave me $800 to sort of help me set myself up. And the thing is, and within a year and a half of that, I was in debt. That means I had a house, I had a mortgage. I had given up my ordination as a monk, and I'd gotten a regular job so I could even get credit cards and things, things like that. So I was 34 and I got right into the whole system of, having a mortgage and all of those things like that. So you don't need to think, oh my God, what about my career? I think it'll work out. So the point anyway is that if you are serious, these are some suggestions and thoughts I have. So that concludes this. This is the first of several little chit chats that I'd like to do. Thank you very much.